You are not worth my words. Silence. A silence so deep I can hear every detail of the night. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the dog next door scratching at the fence, the buzz of a street lamp that needs replacing. That kind of silence can play tricks on a man, amplify every flutter of the heart and every flicker of doubt. My mouth is dry, and my palms are damp as if I run a marathon. But I haven't run anywhere. I'm sitting in the dark at the table, staring at nothing, feeling everything. She's in the next room. Liz, my wife of 8 years, kneeling by the bed, rummaging through the bottom drawer for who knows what. I hear the scrape of wood, the rustle of clothes. Then nothing. The hush of her breath, or maybe it's just the echo of my own. It's impossible to tell anymore, because my mind feels like a fractured mirror. I keep expecting her to come into the kitchen, flick on the light, see me hunched over, but she stays in the other room, locked in her own world. I shift in my chair, and the cheap wood squeaks. Suddenly, I'm aware of how different life felt just a few days ago, before I found the jacket in our closet, the jacket that wasn't mine. Why did I even reach in there that night? Maybe some part of me already knew. The second I touched it, I caught the scent of cologne I'd never worn, something sharp and musky. A smell that didn't belong in my house, in my life. There were pockets with big gold buttons and a brand name I'd never heard of. A man's jacket. A man who is not me. A lot of folks say you react on instinct in moments like that. Scream, hurl accusations, demand answers. But I froze, that jacket dangling from my hand like a snake. My mind started howling, but my body stayed still, as if I had to confirm it one more time. Check the label, check the size, compare it to my own clothes. Do I even fit in this? Of course not. It was bigger, broader in the shoulders, and it smelled of sweat and cologne that stung the back of my throat. I hung it back up, quietly, gently, as though it might combust if I handled it too roughly. It took me another few hours of silent pacing, going in circles around our small living room, before confronting her. When I finally asked in that low, trembling voice, "Whose jacket is that?" she didn't even look at me. Her eyes darted to the floor. She could have made up a story about a coworker, or maybe said it was for donation, or that she'd found it. But she didn't. She just said, "It's not yours." That was it. 2 words. It's not yours. The final crush of something I'd been suspecting for months. I replay that moment now as I wait in the kitchen, letting the quiet do most of the talking. I stand up slowly, walk to the window, and stare out into the desert night. The Phoenix skyline is a dull glow on the horizon. Heat radiates off the pavement even after sunset. It's barely spring, but the temperature doesn't care. A single faint star flickers overhead, the only witness to my unraveling. She walks in, her soft footsteps on the tiles. I can feel her behind me, close but not touching. The air is thick, and the tension scrapes my skin. She says nothing. I know she wants me to speak first, to fill the void, to lead the conversation. But I've got nothing left to say. My eyes burn from exhaustion, from heartbreak, from the scorching dryness of the desert. I wonder if she can feel my anger in the air, or if I'm too numb to show it. "Are you okay?" she whispers, voice trembling. So small, so different from the strong, capable Liz I married. I turn around. No. She meets my gaze for maybe a second, then looks away. I was trying to find the words. "I'm sorry." Her apology feels cheap, a token to toss on the pile of my misery. I grip the back of the chair, knuckles white. Memories flash. Her bright smile on our wedding day, the day she found out about her promotion, the evenings we spent planning vacations that never quite happened, as if we always believed tomorrow would be kinder. Where is he now? I ask, staring at the corner of the room, refusing to look at her. "Mike, please, let's take a step back." She has a habit of saying that. Let's take a step back, as though pulling away from the precipice makes the cliff vanish. The cliff of truth. The cliff of everything. I exhale. My voice comes out hollow. Take a step back to what? To the time before you found somebody else's arms to crawl into. Her lip quivers, tears welling. I know you're angry. I blink, feeling a tightness in my chest. Angry? No, Liz. I pause. It's worse than anger. I feel like my entire life is a lie. She starts to speak, but I cut her off with the flick of my wrist. I already understood everything, I say softly, my voice as lifeless as I feel. Don't bother. I never wanted to hurt you. The wave of betrayal swells. Funny way of showing it. I can't stand in that kitchen anymore. Every inch of this house feels infected. I turn to walk out the door into the silent darkness, leaving her behind. But then I remember. I have nowhere to go. My life is here, or it was. So I hunch over the porch railing, letting the hot night air wash over me, trying to make sense of everything. My stomach churns, as if I might vomit from the force of my own confusion. I can still hear her inside, crying softly, rummaging around, probably panicking about what to do next. For the first time in our marriage, I don't care about her tears. Or maybe I do. Maybe it's just buried under the mountain of pain. I don't recall sleeping that night. The next morning, the sun rose with a vengeance, flooding the neighborhood in harsh, unrelenting light. Liz was in the kitchen, hair uncombed, eyes puffy. She was making coffee. I approached her from behind. She jumped when I spoke. I'm going to school, I said. My job. The only routine that I could still rely on. She opened her mouth to respond, but I just grabbed my car keys and left. The day blurred. At the high school where I teach English, I read from a novel. Words about betrayal and heartbreak that usually felt poetic, but now felt too real, too raw. My students noticed I was off. I half expected them to ask if something was wrong, but they stayed quiet. Maybe they sensed a boundary they shouldn't cross. When I came home that evening, I found a single piece of lined paper propped against the salt shaker on the kitchen table. Her handwriting. I need time to think. I'm sorry. No signature. No explanation. Just sorry. The house was empty. Part of me felt relief. Part of me felt hollow. And that's how it went for a few days. I worked, came home to a quiet, lifeless shell of a house, rummaged through the fridge for leftover takeout, stared at the walls until my eyes burned from dryness. The desert sun rose and set, but in my heart, it was perpetually midnight. One evening, after showering, I opened our closet, my closet, I guess, and found the damned jacket again. I yanked it off the hanger, half hoping it would tear. I pressed my nose to the collar, forcing myself to confront the smell of him. And that's the moment I noticed a small tear in the lining. One of the pockets had come loose. Inside, I felt something crumpled. A receipt. 2 dinners at some fancy restaurant across town, dated last Saturday. Liz told me she was working late that night. My stomach lurched. A wave of raw fury shot through me. I flung the jacket across the room, letting it land in a crumpled heap. Then I sank to the floor, laughing bitterly at how cliché it all was. The secret dinner, the lying wife, the unsuspecting husband. I wrote a letter. No, more like a scribbled note. If you find this, forgive me, I wrote. As if her forgiveness mattered, as if her pardoning me for leaving would fix anything. It felt final, the last pathetic thread of an unraveling life. Then I slipped out in the dead of night, slid the note into our mailbox, and drove away. I didn't wake her. I just disappeared, figuring she'd discover I was gone soon enough. I headed north, no real plan in mind. The highway stretched ahead, a dark serpent uncoiling under the desert moonlight. The feeling in my gut was a stew of regret, anger, and a weird sense of freedom. I rolled down the windows. Warm wind whipped at my face. I told myself I'd vanish for a while. Let her wonder. Let her reflect on what she'd done. Weeks turned into months. I found a small rental near Flagstaff, a one-room place with a bed that squeaked and a window that overlooked pine trees swaying in the mountain breeze. The days passed in a haze of attempts to read, attempts to write, attempts to forget. I took odd jobs, tutoring kids, helping an old man who needed his library organized. I never gave them my real name, letting them call me Mike from out of town. My reflection in the mirror grew more haggard. I shaved less. I lost weight. My phone stayed off most of the time. Whenever I did turn it on, there were calls and voicemails from numbers I recognized. Liz's cell, a few friends, my brother. I never answered. Eventually, the calls slowed and stopped. Silence again, the kind of quiet that almost felt like punishment. One day, I turned on my phone to find no new messages. That hurt more than I expected. A year passed. A long, monotonous year of walking through the pines, burying myself in library books, sleeping poorly in a cold bed. I didn't expect Liz to come looking for me. In my mind, she'd moved on, built a life with her new man. I'd sometimes stare at a blank wall, imagining them together, her slender arms around his athletic body, his deep laugh, the jacket that used to smell like him. My chest constricted every time I pictured it, a pain that felt like a clenched fist around my heart. One day, purely by chance, I was sitting in a local cafe that offered free Wi-Fi. I hopped online to check the news, see if the world was still spinning. Something caught my eye. A recommended video on a social media site, titled, "How I Survived Betrayal and Found Strength." I almost scrolled past, but the freeze-frame image was Liz's face. My heart hammered. She looked thinner, older, her cheeks more hollow, her hair pinned back. She sat in front of a camera, eyes red, like she'd been crying. She was hosting a channel, some personal vlog or motivational talk. My hand shook as I clicked play, not sure if I could stomach hearing her voice. But I did. She spoke about betrayal. Not my betrayal, not hers specifically. But the theme was heartbreak, guilt, coping, all that. Then she mentioned a name, Alex, the man with the jacket, presumably. I felt my jaw tighten. She paused in the video, tears glittering, said something about how everyone has reasons for the things they do. Then, after a long moment, she whispered my name, Mike. I almost dropped my phone. Hearing my name roll off her lips felt like a punch to the gut. She went on about how I'd vanished, how she hadn't heard from me in a year, and how the guilt weighed on her every single day. She said that love isn't about claiming or possessing. It's about respect, trust, and she'd broken that trust. She said she couldn't change the past, but she could try to help others heal, share her story, even if it meant exposing her shame. I swallowed hard. My eyes flicked around the cafe. People sipped coffee, chatted about the weather. Meanwhile, my entire life was unraveling all over again, right there in a video on the internet. She said she was sorry. She looked straight into the camera, tears slipping down her cheeks, talking about how she hoped I was alive, how she found my letter in the mailbox. Read those words. "If you find this, forgive me." She said she didn't know if she had the right to forgive me for leaving, or if I had the right to forgive her for what she'd done. But she hoped. Then she mentioned how everything changed when she realized the man she'd turned to, Alex, had ties to me. The camera jumped, maybe an editing cut. She swallowed. Her eyes darted away. He knew Mike from the gym, from a local volunteer program. They crossed paths before. And I never knew until it was too late. My breathing came ragged. My chest felt tight. Time doesn't heal, I thought. It just crawls behind us until we meet again, reopening old wounds. I shut off the video, jammed my phone into my pocket, and dashed out of the cafe as though someone had set it on fire. That night, a thunderstorm rolled over the mountains, rare for that area, but it happened. Lightning forked across the sky. Thunder rattled my windows. I couldn't sleep. I paced the room, old nightmares returning like specters in the glare of each lightning strike. I don't know what possessed me to do it, but at dawn, I packed my meager belongings into the trunk of my battered sedan and headed back south. Phoenix soared toward me on the highway, the desert stretching out on either side, cacti standing like silent witnesses. My chest pounded with dread, but also with a twisted form of determination. I had no plan, no idea what I'd do once I found Liz or Alex, but something in me needed closure, or maybe I needed to see how far down this rabbit hole of pain and betrayal could go. The city skyline came into view under a harsh midday sun. I felt like a ghost returning to the ruins of an old life. The house, my house, was empty, a for rent sign stuck in the yard. Peering in through the windows, I saw dusty floors, the echo of my footsteps on the porch. A neighbor recognized me, said Liz had moved out months ago. She left no forwarding address that he knew of. I checked cheap motels until I found a vacancy in a dusty corner of town near where the highways split. The motel room was small, smelled of stale cigarettes, and had a flickering lamp by the bed. I tossed my duffel bag on the chair, then logged onto the Wi-Fi, searching for Liz's channel. Sure enough, there it was. A new video posted recently, moving on, but never forgetting. I clicked. The screen showed her outside some place that looked like a community center. She was standing with Alex. I recognized the set of his shoulders, that confident tilt of his head. The camera panned around. They were talking about a charity event, raising funds for local families in need of better health and nutrition programs. She introduced him as a personal trainer, her friend, her anchor in difficult times. The word anchor made my stomach twist. They parted ways near the end of the video, and she stared into the camera, expression solemn. "Mike, if you're out there, I'm sorry. I wish I could talk to you. I wish I could say all the things I never said." She ended with, "Sometimes we find ourselves too late." Then the screen went dark. I sat there, feeling my pulse in my throat, trying to parse what I'd just watched. Was she with him? Were they happy? Or was she still tormented by guilt? And why was I there, in that cheap motel, punishing myself all over again? Eventually, I found out the location of that community center from a poster on a local library bulletin board. I drove out there in the afternoon. Clouds overhead threatened more rain, a weird phenomenon in this part of Arizona that time of year. A dryness coated my mouth, my hands shaky on the wheel. I parked in a gravel lot behind the center, listening to the crunch of rocks under the tires. I got out, heart pounding. Music played somewhere inside the building. Upbeat, motivational tunes you'd hear in a gym class. Then I saw a tall figure standing near the entrance, talking to someone. My pulse hammered. It was Alex. He wore a gray polo shirt with the center's logo. That athletic stance, broad shoulders, the face of the man who had upended my life. A swirl of contradictory emotions rose inside me. Rage, fear, sorrow, an odd curiosity. I wanted to see him, to speak, but I also wanted to run away, to forget the sight of his confident posture. Then he glanced over, as if sensing me. Our eyes locked. He paused, mid-conversation. Slowly, the other person left, and Alex started toward me, uncertain steps. The wind rattled a chain-link fence around the parking lot, dust swirling around our legs. Neither of us spoke for a second. I noticed small details, the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the glimmer of sweat on his brow in the heat. Finally, he said, "Mike." I nodded, jaw clenched. "Yeah." He exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath for a year. I never meant to." He paused, searching for words. "I didn't know you two were. I didn't know Liz was married to you." I stared at him, face tightening. "And when you found out?" He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "It was complicated. She and we connected over pain, frustrations. It's not an excuse. It just happened. I wanted to lunge at him, to break something, maybe break him. But instead, I breathed in the dusty air, and I felt so tired." "Yeah," I said flatly. "I bet." He spoke softly. "Liz regrets everything. She left that house, tried to find you. She never expected you to vanish like that." A rumble of thunder in the distance. The sky was tinted bruised purple. I took a step closer. Where is she now? He nodded toward the double doors of the community center. She's inside, doing a workshop, public speaking, telling her story. She's trying to help people going through heartbreak. He grimaced. She mentions you a lot. I think she's still in love with you. In love with me. The phrase felt empty, like a scratched record. She has an odd way of showing it. Alex's eyes lowered. I know what I did was wrong. I breathed. I already understood everything. I don't need your apology. He opened his mouth, but I was already moving toward the doors. My heartbeat pounded, adrenaline surging. Inside, the air was cooler, artificial. A few people milled around a hallway lined with pamphlets about nutrition and mental health. Somewhere behind a closed door, I heard voices. Then I found the door labeled Workshop, Healing After Betrayal. I snorted at the irony. I opened it. About 10 or so people sat on folding chairs, arranged in a half circle. And there was Liz at the front, her eyes on some notes in her hand. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore a modest blouse. She was speaking softly, words I didn't fully register because the moment I stepped in, she looked up. The color drained from her face. She nearly dropped her notes. Silence fell over the room, a hush in which everything was heard. The squeak of the metal door as I closed it behind me. The slight gasp from someone in the front row. Liz's lips parted, trembling. Time slowed. Heat flushed my face, even though the air conditioning was on. My mind was that chaotic swirl again, inside me a porridge of shock and anger. Outside me the bright fluorescent lighting that made everything harsh. She set her notes down. Everyone. She faltered, eyes on me. Excuse me. I need a moment. The group glanced among themselves as she hurried toward me. We slipped out into the hallway. For the longest second, we just stared. She opened her mouth, shut it, then opened it again, stumbling. You're here. I folded my arms. I'm here. She fidgeted with her hands, her eyes darting across my face. I tried to find you. I made calls. I left messages for your brother. Her tone was rushed, her words pouring out. I thought you hated me so much that I did hate you, I said. But now I feel. I don't know what I feel. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Mike, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but please understand. I was lonely. I made mistakes. I cut in sharply. Mistakes or decisions. Because you don't just trip and fall into somebody else's bed. She looked around, noticing a few curious gazes from the workshop door. She nodded toward an empty office. Let's talk in here. I followed her in, and she closed the door. The blinds on the small window rattled. Dim overhead lights revealed the anxious flush in her cheeks. My heart drummed so loud I could hear it in my ears. She launched into what was almost a soliloquy. I was lost, Mike. You were distant after your mom passed away. I felt like I was losing you. Then my job got stressful, and I confided in Alex for moral support. It turned into more. I never thought I'd betray you like that. She covered her face with her hands. It's the worst thing I've ever done. I stared, feeling a twinge of pity or maybe sorrow. I spoke quietly, in that same hollow tone. I already understood everything. Why else would a jacket be in our closet? She dropped her hands, tears glistening. I was hoping you'd never find out. A bitter laugh escaped me. Well, I did. She nodded, tears spilling over. I saw your letter. If you find this, forgive me. I thought I'd never see you again. I swallowed. So you left. Went to him. Her shoulders sagged. For a while. But it wasn't. It wasn't the fairy tale I thought it might be. I realized how damaged I was, how guilty I felt. I couldn't keep living in that lie. So I moved out on my own, started these talks to help people, and to process my guilt. She hesitated. I'm not with Alex anymore. He's a friend, That's all. Maybe I don't deserve love, but I couldn't pretend everything was normal. A swirl of conflicting emotions welled up in me. Rage, sadness, a twisted sense of satisfaction that at least they weren't cozy lovers living in my old home. I exhaled. And now you preach about betrayal to random strangers. She flinched. I'm trying to fix things in the only way I know how. To help others heal. And maybe find some redemption for myself. She touched my arm, gently. I never stopped caring about you. I stared at her hand on my sleeve. My voice came out low. You can't undo what happened. Neither can I. She nodded, tears drying on her cheeks. I know. Lightning flashed through the tiny office window. In the distance, the roll of thunder. The city was about to be hit by a sudden storm. Fitting, I thought. The mood that had been building inside me was about to crack. I remembered the old me, an English teacher who believed in the power of words. Yet words had failed us. The heartbreak had outstripped language. Now, all we had left was raw honesty. Why did you keep calling me? Leaving messages, I asked. She shrugged, voice trembling with emotion. Because I needed you to know I'm not just a cheat. I'm still the woman who married you, who admired your quiet strength. I wanted you to see that I've paid for my mistakes every day, that I'm trying to become a better person. She took a shallow breath. I wanted to say I love you, and that I set you free if that's what you want. If you can't stand the sight of me, I'll understand. I felt my chest tighten again, that swirling porridge of emotions. Revenge, I muttered, stepping back from her. I thought about it. Sometimes I wanted to burn everything you cared about, to make you feel my pain. She bowed her head. I know. I clenched my fists. But I realized something. Revenge isn't the answer. It's not a reckoning. It's a way of letting go. Her eyes flicked up. What do you mean? I inhaled deeply. I have a choice. Carry this hatred like a boulder on my chest, or let it go. Do something with my life that's not shaped by your betrayal. I stared at the scuffed carpet, and for the first time in a year, I feel like maybe I can breathe. A trembling relief slid over her features. But I wasn't finished. Doesn't mean I'm forgiving you right now. Doesn't mean everything's fine. It just means I'm not going to destroy myself trying to punish you. That's what I've been doing. Vanishing, living like a ghost. I shook my head. That's not living. Tears trickled down her face again. The sound of rain spattering against the window grew louder. She reached out, but I stepped back. I want to be free. I said, voice hollow. I want to walk away from all this with a shred of dignity. She swallowed. You have that right. For a moment, we just stood there, locked in a tense standstill, the patter of rain and distant thunder all around us. Eventually, I opened the office door and stepped into the hallway. I could hear the workshop crowd muttering behind the adjacent wall, wondering what was going on. Liz followed me out. We walked side by side in silence. The overhead lights flickered slightly, maybe from the storm. Then Alex was there, lingering near the entrance, as if waiting. He straightened when he saw us. Is everything? He began. I fixed him with a stare, his face colored with shame or guilt. Maybe both. We let the tension hang. Then I said, I'm not hitting you, if that's what you're worried about. He blinked, uncertain. I get it. I nodded curtly. Then, in a low tone, we're done here. He parted his lips like he wanted to respond, but I turned away and pushed the door open, stepping out into the storm that was gathering overhead. Cool rain splashed down on the concrete, a relief from the desert heat. Liz called after me, voice echoing in the empty parking lot, but I kept walking. Lightning lit up the sky, a memory flooded back. The day we promised to be there for each other, in sickness and in health, in good times and in bad. That vow felt so naive now. But there was also a strange clarity in the rain. Maybe the desert needed this storm to cleanse itself, to start fresh. I paused near my car, raindrops soaking my shirt, dripping down my forehead. She caught up, breathless. "Mike, please, talk to me." I turned. "I have nothing more to say." She looked devastated, water running down her cheeks, mixing with tears. "What are you going to do?" I stared at her, noticing the small details that used to comfort me. Her blue eyes, the shape of her lips. Now they felt like shards of glass. I took a steadying breath. "I don't know, but I'm not staying in a motel forever. Maybe I'll get my job back. Maybe I'll move somewhere else. But I'm not crawling back to the life we had." She pressed her lips together, nodding slowly. "I understand." I wanted to scream that she didn't understand, that she could never truly feel the gaping hole inside me. But I held back. The rain hammered louder, streaking down the windshield of my car. I swung the door open and slipped inside, shutting out the downpour and her sorrowful face. Starting the engine, I glanced one last time at her standing there, hair plastered to her head, tears lost in the rain. She looked so small, so broken. I felt a pang of pity, nostalgia. I wasn't sure. But I drove away, out of that parking lot, onto the slick streets. Lightning flashed overhead, thunder rumbled, and the wipers squeaked as they brushed the water off the glass. For the next week, I drifted. I found a short-term rental on the other side of town, used some savings to pay the deposit. The place was cramped and smelled of mothballs, but it was mine. No ghosts of old memories embedded in the walls. I called the school where I used to teach. The principal, an old friend, sounded relieved to hear from me. Said they had a long-term sub but would be happy to have me back next semester if I wanted. I said I'd think about it. Nights were the hardest. The swirl of regrets would come, especially the memory of seeing them together in that first horrifying moment. The knowledge that the last year of my life was shaped by her betrayal. But each day, I tried to push forward. I took morning walks in the desert, letting the sunrise paint the sky with new color. That emptiness in my chest didn't vanish, but it dulled. Sometimes, while making coffee or brushing my teeth, I'd recall the taste of her lips, the warmth of her body. Then I'd think of that jacket, that cologne. I'd feel a surge of anger, but then it would subside into numbness. Over time, I realized I was gradually reclaiming the space in my head that she had occupied. A few weeks later, I got a message from Alex. The tone was cautious, polite, saying he respected that I might not want to see him, but asking if I'd meet him for a conversation. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe I just needed to close that chapter properly. We met at a small coffee house, ironically not far from where Liz and I used to have Sunday brunch. He sat at a corner table, flipping through his phone, posture tense. When he saw me, he stood, offered a handshake. I eyed his hand for a moment before reluctantly taking it. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly, sitting back down. "I'll keep this short. I don't want to make your life harder." I folded my arms, leaning back in the chair. "Go ahead." He ran a hand over his short hair. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry. Seriously, I'm not asking for your friendship. I just want you to know that after you disappeared, Liz was torn up. She blamed herself for everything. I tried to help, but, well, we realized what we did was wrong. We ended things. I never meant to become a wedge in your marriage." I stared at the table, noticing a scratch on its surface. "You did become that wedge." His voice wavered. "Yeah, I did." He exhaled. "Look, if you need me to step away, leave this city, I will. I just don't want to cause more damage." I shook my head, an unexpected calm settling in me. "No, that's not necessary. Your existence isn't the problem. My marriage ended the moment she chose to betray me. If it wasn't you, maybe it'd have been someone else." He flinched. "Still, I regret it." A waitress came over, depositing 2 cups of coffee we hadn't even ordered. Maybe Alex told her in advance. Steam curled from the mugs. I wrapped my hands around mine, letting the warmth seep into my fingers. We sat in silence for a while. the bustle of the coffee house around us. People chatting, espresso machines hissing. Then he cleared his throat. "Liz wants to talk to you again, but she's afraid she'll push you away more. I'm not delivering messages for her, I swear. I just thought you should know." I looked up. "I said all I need to say." He nodded, gaze dropping. "Okay." I managed a bitter smile. "You want me to say I forgive you, or that I don't hate you? I'm not there yet. Maybe one day, I'll feel differently. But for now, let's just say we're done." He swallowed hard. "Understood." Finishing my coffee, I stood. He stood too, and I noticed how he was about my height but broader in the shoulders. The man who'd filled that jacket. The image made me shudder inside. "Goodbye, Alex." Without waiting for his response, I walked out into the blistering sunlight. Despite the scalding heat, I felt a strange sense of cool relief in my chest. Over the following months, I settled into a routine. I took the school job again in the fall, stepping back into the classroom. The kids noticed my subdued energy, but gradually I found my footing. I taught them about Shakespearean betrayals, about the cost of duplicity. Maybe I channeled my own story into the lessons, though I never spoke of my personal life. In the evenings, I'd return to my small rental. Sometimes I'd cook a simple dinner, watch the sun bleed out across the desert sky. The heartbreak still lingered, but each day, it felt less like an open wound. Liz sent me a few emails, short and polite, asking if she could at least talk, meet for coffee, or finalize some practical matters. Eventually, I replied with equally short messages about bank accounts, the divorce process. We never had kids, which simplified things legally. Through a series of curt emails, we untangled finances and set a plan to file the paperwork. She wrote paragraphs. I wrote single sentences. She apologized. I thanked her for the info. It was mechanical, businesslike. Then came the hearing for the divorce. We saw each other in the courthouse lobby. She looked pale, stressed. The process was straightforward. No major disputes. We sat in front of a judge, who asked each of us standard questions. Everything was calm, formal, quick. With a few signatures, it was done. We walked out, free of legal ties. But the emotional ties, those are harder to sever. Outside the courthouse, the midday sun blazed down. She stopped me with a trembling hand on my forearm. "Mike, I know I lost the right to ask you for anything, but can we talk? Just for a moment, away from the lawyers." My gut clenched. I nodded once, terse. We moved to a shaded area near some potted desert plants. She leaned against a concrete wall, crossing her arms. "I'm going back to Springfield for a while. To see my family. I can't stand Phoenix right now." I washed her face. "Sounds like a plan." She stared at me for a long moment. "I wanted you to know. If you ever need anything, even just to talk, you can reach out. I'm not asking for a second chance. I'm just letting you know I still care about you." Her eyes shone with tears she was trying to hold back. I said nothing, my face a stony mask. She took a shaky breath, then whispered, "All right. Good luck, Mike." She walked away, and I let her go, turning my eyes up to the scorching Arizona sun. My heart pounded, tears threatening at the corners of my eyes. But I blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. Not here, not now. A month later, the divorce papers arrived in the mail, finalized. I set them on the table, and stared at the official seal. So that was it. 8 years of marriage reduced to a legal footnote. You might think I'd feel a surge of grief or regret, but all I felt was a curious emptiness. Then, as the day wore on, that emptiness gave way to a sense of relief. That boulder of hatred I'd been carrying around had lightened just a bit more. In the weeks that followed, I found myself focusing on what made me feel alive. Reading in a quiet cafe, taking my class on creative writing exercises, going for drives in the open desert. Each moment of peace was a tiny victory. I even started volunteering at a literacy program on weekends. I never told the kids about my personal drama, But I saw my own isolation reflected in some of their eyes. Maybe guiding them towards self-expression was my way of healing. Sometimes, at night, I'd recall my father's voice. When you lose something you thought was yours, you gotta decide if it was really ever yours to begin with. A lifetime of illusions. A marriage that might have been flawed from the start. But I still had me, whoever that was. Rebuilding from scratch was terrifying, but it was also liberating. One day, after months of steady progress, I got a letter in the mail from Springfield, no return address. Opening it, I recognized Liz's handwriting. My heart thumped, but I read it calmly. She wrote about having found a counselor, about working on her issues. She mentioned how she realized her mistakes were bigger than just the affair. They stemmed from insecurities, a fear of not being good enough. She said she hoped I was finding happiness, even if it wasn't with her. It ended with, "I will always care about you. I understand if you never want to respond. Be well." I folded the letter slowly. That old pang of sorrow surfaced, but it wasn't all-consuming. I sat there for a while, letting tears come, gentle and quiet. Then I set the letter aside. Revenge. For a long time, I thought vengeance would ease the pain. But I saw now that real vengeance wasn't about hurting her or Alex. The real vengeance was living my life on my terms, free from the chains of their betrayal. Not letting their actions destroy what was left of me. Time doesn't heal all wounds, but time can dull them, can help us see what matters. Sometimes you have to break before you can rebuild. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply standing tall after someone tried to tear you down. And so I stand here now, staring at the desert sunset from the stoop of my new place, the sky on fire with oranges and reds. A gentle breeze carries the faint scent of sagebrush. My mind isn't boiling in chaos anymore. There's a quiet acceptance, a cautious optimism. I smile, a sad but genuine smile. No, she wasn't worth my words back then. Maybe, in another life, we'd have found a different ending. But in this one, I found my own form of justice, my liberation. I close my eyes, letting the warmth of the setting sun wash over me. A single tear slides down my cheek, catching the last light of day. And then I let it go.